my name is Maylin and welcome back to my channel. I'm a flutist, performer, and music teacher located in the city of Kamloops, British Columbia, and this is my channel where we learn all things flute, so thank you so much for joining me here today. In today's video, we'll be learning all about triplets and about grace notes, so if you're interested, then just keep on watching. As always, if you do have any questions throughout the video, please feel free to drop them in the comment section down below. I do my best to answer them as soon as I see them. Also, if you have any issues when it comes to practicing, feel free to check out my free practice guide, also located in the description down below. It gives you 8 really easy steps to follow to help guide your practice sessions. And also, if you are really enjoying this series, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and also to subscribe for more videos just like this. Alright, so let's just get right into today's video. So as I mentioned previously, we will be continuing on with the Trevor Wise Beginner's Book for the Flute Part 2, and I'll be starting today on page 62. The first subject of today is going to be triplets. So I'm just going to put up the little excerpt that Mr. Wise written about triplets right up here, and I'll read it for you. A triplet. When 3 notes are played in the same time as 2 notes of the same value, they are called a triplet. So for example, we can play, let's take 1 quarter note for example, we can actually split that into 2 eighth notes. But if you wanted to play that as a triplet figure, that means we could fit 3 eighth notes into that 1 quarter note. The 3 quavers or eighth notes below are played in the time of 2 quavers or eighth notes. A triplet is marked by the figure 3 above or below the 3 notes. So it's always going to be very clear when you see triplets coming up in the music, because as you'll see in the example that's coming up, you'll always see a 3 either above or below or the bar stems of the notes. Alright, so I'm just going to put the first little exercise here that introduces these triplets to us, or right over here. So I'm just going to call it the D minor andante piece, or exercise 1. Alright, so before we get into clapping and counting this, and giving you some more tips about playing and counting triplets, let's go through our 4 starter bits. So number 1 being our key signature. So let's take a look at if we have any accidentals between our treble clef there and our time signature, and we have 1 flat. So that means we can either be in F major or its relative minor, which is D minor. Again, a reminder to find the minor key is either going up by 6 letter names, so F, G, A, B, C, D, or you can also go down 3 letter names, so F, E, D. Alright, so we're going to look at the first and last note to see if we have any indication of the tonic of either one of those keys. So at the beginning we start on an A, so it doesn't really give us too much information, but we do end on a D. So we're already kind of going towards D minor here. The next thing we're going to be looking for there is our raised 7th. So again, if we know our minor key is D, we're going to go down 1 semitone, and that means that we're looking for C sharps. So if you look at all the C's in the piece, we do see C sharp everywhere. And then we do also have a hint of that raised 6th as well in that second line there, which is that B natural. So we're already moving towards D minor. I would say that we are in D minor. Of course, we do have that little reminder there at the beginning that we did see that we are in D minor. And the second thing we're going to look at is our time signature. So we do have a time signature written there, 3/4. So the top number tells us how many beats we have per bar. So we have 3 beats per bar, and the bottom number tells us what kind of notes those beats are. A 4 represents quarter notes, so that means we have 3 quarter notes per bar. Wonderful. The next thing we're going to be looking at, number 3, is our tempo indication, dynamics, and articulation. So we'll look at our tempo first. So we do have andante, there's a marking. Once we get to clapping and counting this, I'll be doing a quarter note equals 74. Now let's look at the dynamics here. So we start on P, which is piano, which is softly. In the first 2 bars there, we do then on the 3rd bar have a mezzo forte with a hairpin there that gives us, that indicates a crescendo into bar 5. Doesn't tell us where we want to go. So I would assume maybe a forte all the way up until we have again another mezzo forte written in the 2nd line, 3rd bar, where we have a decrescendo to the end. And then just be aware when it comes to the articulation that we do have the 8th note slurred in the 1st bar, and every single time we see the triplet figure, those are going to be slurred as well. And then the last thing we have here is number 4, our roadmap. So let's check if we have any repeats or any decapos or anything like that. I don't see any, so we're just playing it from top to bottom. Now that we've gone through the first 4 starter bits, now we can get into the clap and count. So my recommendation when it comes to counting triplets is just to say triplet or strawberry or anything that has 3 syllables in it in your head when you have the metronome going. So again, my metronome here is going to be beating a quarter note equals 74. And even before we start clapping and counting this, I want you to try and clap triplets along with me. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be alternating between triplets and eighth notes, just so you can see how it feels like clapping those beside the metronome. So first we'll start with those eighth notes. So be 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. Very good. And now we'll try it with triplet. So first, making sure that we have the rhythm of the metronome with us. Now you're going to just say fit triplet into each of the beats here. So first, before clapping it, try saying it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Triplet, 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 strawberry, 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 strawberry. Whatever 3-syllable word works for you. I always like using triplet personally. So once you feel comfortable saying that, and again, if you want to do it a little bit slower, feel free to go ahead. It is not an exact kind of rhythm, so you're not going to be able to necessarily count exactly how each triplet is going to fit between each beat. You're just going to have to get a feeling for what it feels like and fitting those in as best as you can. So now that we've set it along with the metronome, now let's try clapping it. So I'm going to clap just the triplets, and then as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to alternate between eighth notes, just 2 eighth notes, and then the 3 eighth note triplets. So this is going to be just the triplets counting, and I'm going to say it. 1, 2, triplet, 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 triplet. Very good. And then for a challenge here is going to be, I'm going to do eighth notes and then triplets. 1 and 2 and triplet, 1, 2, 1 and triplet, 2 and triplet, 3 and triplet, 4 and triplet. Very good. And if you want to do more exercises like that, feel free to even write out your own rhythms and see how you can incorporate those triplets to really help you get comfortable with the idea and the sound of what a triplet sounds like against the beat of the metronome. So now that we've done some little exercises there when it comes to triplets, now let's get into the piece here. So again, my quarter note is going to be at 74 beats per minute. 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. Triplet, 2, 3. 1, 2, and 3. Triplet, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Triplet, 1, 2. Triplet, 1, 2. Triplet, 1, 2. Very good. And of course, if you find that's a little bit too fast for you, again, go back into the playback settings and turn down the tempo here. So the playback setting would be maybe at 0.085 and see how that goes. All right, now that we've clapped and counted, now I'm going to play it with the flute. And of course, with this one, if you have any issues with notes, make sure that you write them down, or if you need a recap with the fingering chart, so if you're not sure where each fingering is for the notes, I have a link to a fingering chart always in the description down below for you. 1, 2, 3. Beautiful. So that's going to be a really lovely piece to get once you do get a hang of that triplet figure. All right, now we're going to move on to the second subject of today's lesson, and that's going to be grace notes. So I'm going to put up the little blurb that Mr. Y has written right over here. Grace notes. These are added to melody to decorate it. They're always written in small print and are played quickly. And there are all kinds of different grace notes that you can play, and depending on the style of the music, so if it's older music or if it's newer music, it will change how we place those grace notes. Now, you don't need to worry about that right at this moment. What we're going to learn first is how to play grace notes on the beat. So that's all you need to remember, is that we're learning how to play grace notes on the beat. Certainly when you are learning a new piece, sometimes adding the grace notes can make things just a little bit unnecessarily tricky. So it's always important to learn the bass rhythm first and then add the grace notes after. So what we'll do here first is we're going to learn the piece just as if there were no grace notes. So we'll do it with counting and clapping, and we'll also do it with playing the flute. And then I'm going to also add those grace notes in just so that you can see what it feels like when I'm clapping it and what it feels like when you were playing it. Let's put up the piece right over here. So this piece is called Fantasy Piece. It's written by Schumann. We'll go through, of course, our first little 4 starter bits before we get into clapping and counting the piece. So our first bit here is our key signature. So let's take a look in between our clef and our time signature to see if there are any accidentals. So we do see that we do have 1 sharp there. Just want to remember that G is 1 stroke. That means 1 F or 1 sharp, and that one is F sharp. So that means we can either be in G major or E minor. So let's take a look at the first and last notes to see if we have any indication of the tonic of the key signature. So our first note, we do start on a B instead of a G, but that is part of that G major triad, so it's always important to keep in mind. But we do end on a G, so again, we have a strong indication here that we are in G major. Let's take a look and see if we can find the raised 7th of the minor key first, just to make sure. So again, our minor key, our relative minor key is E minor. So again, we go down 1 semitone, and that would be D sharp. So let's see if we can find any D sharps in here. So taking a quick glance, there aren't any D sharps, but we do have some C sharps, but just very briefly in that second line, those 2 last bars there. But otherwise, I would say it's not very strong. There's no strong indication of the minor key here. And as it says at the top there, we are in G major. The next thing we're going to be looking at is number 2, our time signature. So we are in 2/4. Again, the top number tells us how many beats per bar. So that means we have 2 beats per bar, and then the bottom number tells us or indicates what kind of note those beats are. And again, we have 4, so that represents a quarter note. So that means we have 2 quarter notes per measure. Number 3, we're going to look at our tempo indication, dynamics, and articulation. So let's take a look first at our tempo indication. So we do see moderato here. So moderato can be anywhere between quarter note equals 84 beats per minute to 97 beats per minute. We'll choose the slower tempo to start with, so we'll probably go around 84, if not a little bit slower than that. Alright, but now before we get started into that, we'll look at the dynamics. So we do again start on a nice piano just like the previous piece. So piano meaning softly. In the second bar, we do have a crescendo, which goes all the way up to the middle of the third bar, where we do have another decrescendo. So maybe you will possibly come back to piano, depends on where you want the piece to go. Then we have a crescendo again in bar 5, and then we have that nice long, you'll hold that dynamic marking for that next bar, and then we have another decrescendo there at the end of the line. Beginning of the second line, we have mezzo forte, so that means moderately loud. We're going to play that all the way up until the third to last bar there, where we do have a nice crescendo. And then we have another decrescendo at the last bar of the second line, where we again start a piano on the third line. Similar dynamics to what we had at the very beginning. And then let's take a look at, lastly, our articulation. So we don't have anything too crazy, we just have some slurs. Make sure that you do play the slurs there at the third bar, and that you do notice that all the 8th notes are pretty much slurred throughout the piece there. Alright, so now we're going to do the clap and count. So what I'm going to do first is that we're going to clap and count without the 8th notes, or without the grace notes in there, just so that we have a strong foundation in order to play the grace notes on top of. So I will be playing this, or I'll be counting this again at a quarter note equals 84. Alright, here we go. So 1, 2, 1 and 2, and 1, 2, 1 and 2, and 1, 2, and 1, 2, 1, 2, and 1, 2, and 1 and 2, 1, 2, 1 and 2, and 1 and 2, and 1 and 2, 1, 2, 1 and triplet, 1 and a 2, 1, 2, 1 and trip, 1, 2, and 1, 2, 1, 2, and 1, 2, and 1 and 2. Very good. So again, that one might feel a little bit tricky off the top, so feel free to go back into the playback settings and slow down the tempo there until you can clap this where you're comfortable. Of course, now we're going to play that with the flute. Again, this is with no grace notes at the same tempo. 1, 2. So again, go at a slower tempo if you feel like that's still a little bit too fast for you. Make sure that you do take note of that very interesting rhythm, that last bar in the second line with the dotted 8th and 16th. So make sure that you're getting that one yada, two, one yada, two. Make sure you're clapping that right before you play that with the flute. All right, wonderful. So now that we've done it without the grace notes in there, now we're going to try and add the grace notes in there. 1 and 2. 1, 2, 1 and 2, and 1, 2 and 3, or 1, 2, 1 and 2, and 1, 2 and 3, 1 and 2, 1, 2, 1 and 2, and 1 and 2, and 1 and 2, 1, 2, 1 and triple it, 1 and a 2, 1, 2, 1 E and a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2, 1 E and a 1. So another way to think about these grace notes would be to imagine as if they were as bigger notes. Essentially be like fitting 3 16th notes and a quarter note in that same spot. And now we're going to play it with the flute. So again, this is going to be quarter note equals 84. You can always go down into the playback settings and play it at a slower speed if you feel like this is way too fast for you to start off. And then slowly increase it as you get more comfortable. 1, 2, 1 and 2. Forget to mention I missed this at the beginning when you were going through the dynamics and markings, so make sure that you do get that rel at the end there, which is short for rallentando, which is to slow down gradually. So make sure you're just placing that last note, so it's a little bit slower than the rest of the piece. All right, amazing work. So that's going to be it for today's video. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section down below. I do my best to answer them as soon as I see them. And of course, if you have any issues when it comes to practicing, check out my free practice guide, also located in the description down below. Of course, just as a quick reminder, if you did like this video, make sure you like it and share it with your friends if you find it helpful. And as always, thank you so much for joining me here today. You are absolutely amazing, and I appreciate you spending your time here with me today. And as always, happy fluting!